Let's consider for a moment the state of soil on our planet and recognize that it's a very valuable resource. It may not be the resource that comes to mind in most people's minds when they think about what are our most precious resources. They may think of water and food and sunlight perhaps, or maybe even oil and natural gas. But rarely do we consider soil as a valuable natural resource. And so to help us visualize the amount of soil on the earth and how precious it actually is, we're going to use this apple. Represents the planet Earth. This beautiful apple represents the beautiful Earth, almost perfectly round, just like our planet. So if we envision this as our planet Earth, we know that we're considered to be the blue planet. We're the blue planet because most of the Earth is covered with water that reflects blue light. It actually reflects the light of the atmosphere and looks blue. So the blue we see on planet Earth is because of our water. And we are mostly covered with water. So on the planet, we have about 3/4 of our planet is covered with water. So here's our Earth, here's our water, and here's our land. So the water is, of course, important for life to exist, the hydrologic cycle, making up the hydrosphere. But we're considering the soil right now. The 3/4 that we eliminate, that includes all of the oceans, the lakes, the rivers, all of the surface water on the planet. Here is what we are left with on Earth. Now, of the dry land that's left, some of it is very dry in desert soils. Some of it is very wet in swampy soils. So about half of that's remaining is too wet, too dry, too cold, too high in the mountains, too rocky for it to be productive soil, for it to be useful for growing plants and for feeding humanity. So now we are left with 1/2 of 1/4. For those of you doing the math, that is about 1/8 or 12.5% of the surface of the Earth. Now this is the area of the planet that is suitable for us to live. So not only is it where we grow our food, but it's also where we ourselves need to live. And as we know, of all the places where we live on the Earth, not everything is suitable for growing food. About 1/4 of the land on which we live exists in a flood plain where seasonally we have too much water, where it rains or it floods, and therefore it is not productive or able to grow the food and the plants that sustain us. All of our food, all of our fiber, and all of our shelter needs to be grown on this land, and we have to occupy it as well. The second section here represents land that is too rocky or otherwise has very poor soil and does not support agriculture, or plant life in the extremes that we need it to survive. A third piece represents area that's too hot in the desert, and while there is soil, it also is not suitable for growing the trees that make our houses, the plants that produce the fiber that make our clothing, nor the food that we consume to eat. So that leaves us now with this little piece. 1/4 of 1/2 of 1/4. And for those of you doing the math, that represents about 1/32nd of the planet, or 3% of the surface of the earth. Now this last little bit is even smaller than what I just held up, because we know that it's not that we have an entire wedge of earth to work with. We merely occupy the surface of the planet. So we don't have access to what's down here. All we have access to is this little piece right here. This small little piece, this 3% of the surface of the earth, represents the entire amount of soil on the planet. And this soil sustains life for all people and all living things. And for us, this is the entirety of our food, of our clothing, and of our shelter in a direct or an indirect way. Such a fragile, small piece of what would otherwise be a very hospitable and beautiful earth. This fragile piece is worth recognizing, worth saving, and worth doing what we can to protect, to restore, and to rebuild. Soil on earth.